Let us kick the thing starting immediately. I hope
Okay,
you
sir.
remember where we reached last week. I told you to note it so that when we come this week, we didn't have difficulties in tracing where we reached.
Yeah, we will be moving to the definition and categories of human rights.
We didn't start it at all. We didn't start.
No, sir, we stopped there. We are yet to go.
Okay. All right. Then let us proceed immediately. Um, Definition of human act. Before we begin with the definition of what do you call it? The categories of act. Let us first understand what this human act we have been using all along really represents. A human act. There's a very strange differences between, or there's a very strange difference between human act and an act of man. Even though man is also a human being, there is a very wide difference between a human act and the act of man, conceptually speaking, in the context of Islam, and probably not so markedly different from the situation in conventional ethics. Although conventional ethicists are not really interested in some of these categorizations, but for very clear reasons, which we will see very soon, Muslims are very much interested in discussing or dichotomizing human act from the act of man. A human act or human action is understood to mean any human undertaking which is based on rational knowledge and free will, what is known technically in Arabic as irada. One is you execute a particular act and you have full control of that act you executed. In other words, nobody actually forced you into it. Nobody asked you to do that particular thing, which if you didn't do, that person would have been angry with you or would have forced you to do what ordinarily you were not expected, or in your own free will, you wouldn't be willing to do. Here, the person at the center of the whole thing executes that particular act freely without any amount of pressure on him. In Islam, human acts are not limited to the cognitive behavior informed by the individual's intellect. That is not all that human acts, in other words, is understood as far as Islam is concerned. And the reason is very simple, which we shall see very soon. At the same time, Islam does not understand human act based on theoretical knowledge, but particularly practical consciousness in the act of deciding. You should be very conscious at the time you were deciding. Man or humankind cannot be blamed, cannot be punished in simple terms without full control of one's action. It is only when you execute a particular act with full control of your own senses, which means at the time you decided to execute that particular act, you could have decided not to. So you are given equal chances between either deciding to do it or not doing it. If an act is executed with this full complement of both cognition and free will, then as far as Muslims are concerned, such an act is considered to be a human act. It means at the time you were undertaking the act, you should have been fully conscious, of what you were executing. So that when you begin to be blamed, you cannot absent yourself from that full consciousness based on what you executed but that particular act. But as we said, we indicate that it is not only based on the cognitive behavior alone. It is also an act that originates in man as a rational and free being. It means even if you were fully aware or you were fully conscious at the time you were executing that particular act, you knew what you were doing. But in addition to also knowing what you were doing, you should also be very free. Because there are times that people, although are not under any coercion, they, out of fear, execute certain acts before they realize that, wow, this thing I did or this thing they did were not really informed by cognition, were not really informed by free will. When people are praised, they do far better than when they are criticized. When you are living with a child or you are living with somebody, whether your friend, your mother, your father, even yourself as a son, girl, you are living with your parents and all that these parents do to you is constantly nagging you, constantly criticizing you, constantly finding fault with everything you do. In Fanti, they will tell you that when you are doing something, you fumble, you shake, a social. And when people are frightened, when people feel afraid, when people feel coerced, when people are living under certain bondage, whatever they do, even though they do it freely, and they might be conscious at the time they were deciding on that particular act, because they are not freeborns, because they are not free people, because they don't own themselves, because they are living under a certain bondage, they might be restricted in so many ways, including even their ways of thinking. Look at what is going on now between Iran and Iran and Israel. Ordinarily, if these two countries, or call it if the citizens or individuals within these two countries are allowed or are given the opportunity to reason for themselves, if they are given that rational right to reason for themselves, there are a lot of things Israel is doing that it couldn't have done. Today I'm sleeping every now and then. If Israel was given the opportunity to think for itself, knowing fully well that whatever I do, I will be responsible for it, it wouldn't behave the way it is behaving. But because there's somebody somewhere, somehow, manipulating, pushing, becoming the basis of what will happen if Israel should misbehave or behave. At the time Israel attacked Iran, if Israel was going to be aware or was conscious that, hey, if I do a mistake or we do a mistake of attacking somebody who has not caused us any harm physically, and they respond, their response could be more damaging. But when somebody has not done anything, you attack the person, you are likely to, receive a more negative response than when the person is fully aware that the two of you are preparing a duel. In much the same way, if Iran were to act on its own without any fear from any power elsewhere, you could have seen that what is going on would have been more dangerous than it is now. So when individuals, in other words, are living under certain authority, when they are not free in deciding, they could do a lot of things under restrictions. This is the point we are trying to defend here at this point. An individual may be free. Israel is not free. I mean, Israel is free. Iran is free. But you could see that all these two countries have certain restrictions. They are living under certain advantages and disadvantages. And those advantages and disadvantages play out very well in the way they both decide. If Iran doesn't believe that the US is observing it or observing her, and because of that, if it goes beyond what is acceptable, it could face the consequence. This bears the logic of Iran even informing the US that I'm going to attack Iraq, or I'm going to drop some bombs on Iraq, what do you call on Israel, before even sending ballistic missiles. On the other hand, if Israel is aware that it doesn't have any support from anywhere, it would have been more wiser than the way it decides these days. So when people are living under some influence, they are not blameworthy as far as Islam is concerned of actions they execute, even though these actions can be executed based on their own free will. That's why we argued initially that these are not the only ones that determine the humanness of a person's action. But in addition to this, that thing must originate in man, in that human being, as a rational and free being who is not manipulated in any way, anywhere, by any authority, by any jurisdiction. So that whatever it does, it should be fully conscious of that. And then, of course, it should also be aware of the implications of what he or she has done. If an act is executed this way, without any manipulation from anywhere, without any coercion from anywhere, as far as Muslims are concerned, such an act is considered as a human act. Thus, Islam sees man not as a mode of his own destiny. Man is not, contrary to the established perception that being in charge of your own destiny, take your own destiny into your own hands. Far from it. As far as Muslims are concerned, human beings are not considered as being capable of controlling their own destiny. No. Why? Because this is the destiny that determines whatever they come to the earth to execute. Man doesn't have control of his or her own destiny. I mean, man here is used as a gender-sensitive kind of concept. So man, according to Islamic beliefs, does not have, humankind, for that matter, does not have that free, or if you like, that control of destiny as we are made to believe in some jurisdictions. Therefore, a human act is differentiated between, a human act is differentiated from the act of man. Because, as we all know, it is not all acts that man or humankind does that humankind has full control. In the case of human act, man has full control, as we have indicated. Humankind has full control. But in the case of the act of man, everything occurs by default and independent of humankind's personal will, subsumed under the concept of irada. Consistent with this, therefore, if somebody executes an act, but that person does not have full control, that person does not have full, call it volition, or full consciousness of that particular act it is he or she is executing. If that person does not have full control, even if some level of control, but he doesn't have full control of that particular act that person is executing, but it comes in as a default aspect of his being, of his or her quality of being, such an act cannot be considered as a human act, but rather an act of man. What is the doctrinal basis of this argument? In the Quran, Allah says, 20:51, thus, say, nothing shall ever happen to us except what Allah has ordained for us. You understand that? Nothing happens to us except what Allah has ordained for us. None wills except what Allah himself wills. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَنْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Nobody wills. Nobody has the power to will anything on any fellow human being. إِلَّا أَنْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, except what Allah himself wills for humanity. And this is what we call destiny. Qadar in Arabic. He is our Mawla, protector. And in Allah, let the believers put their trust. What we call tawakkul, Allah says every human being should throw his his or her belief, that it is on God alone that we will rely for everything on earth. This recognizes the shortcomings of humanity as people who consider God alone as the one from whom they gain their sources of life. So here, Quran itself sets certain limitations for the life of human beings. It means there are some aspects of life that mankind does not have any strong control over. Human act in Islam is not independent of humankind's existence. It is not. It is rather dependent on humankind's existence. God has created certain things on earth, and has placed man in this earth, giving man the authority to do anything he or she wants. I told you, man is gender sensitive. Man has been given the authority to live freely on this earth, have full control of everything. Man was not restricted in any way. So, for example, we have free air we breathe in. You don't pay because it has been placed for you as part of your humanity. We have animals that we slaughter and enjoy free of charge. We don't pay. Provided you have a knife, you have a gun, you own it, you don't pay. You are not punished for slaughtering an animal because they are part and parcel of your existence. So your existence depends on it. That's why we indicated that human act is not independent of your existence. It is part and parcel of it. You depend on that act. Without it, you can't survive. And you cannot be created and placed with restrictions. God could not have, or would not, even though he could, of course, he would not have created you and placed a lot of barriers in your way. He has given you that freedom of existence. But that freedom also comes with a certain cost in the end. He has just given you as a kind of free thing so that he would test how useful you will make that particular gift he has given you on earth. I don't know whether it is in this class that we quoted. This is my favorite extract from one of the pre-Quranic literature, which of course also reflects very well in the Quranic teachings. It says, Al-Malu Mali. The wealth you people are struggling for, Allah says, it is mine. The money you are
وجنة
struggling for,
جنتي.
Allah says it is mine. Then he says, Jannati, Jannati, the heaven you are struggling for equally is mine. Then he went ahead to add,
اشتري جنتي بالمال.
Wa antum
اشتري
abidi,
جنتي.
you yourselves, you are my servants. I created you as my servants, placed you on my earth, and then gave you my worth. Then he continues, Ya ibadi, oh my servants, istaru jannati bimali,
بالمال.
buy my heaven, use my money to buy my heaven. Now the question is, what else would we have expected Allah, the creator of this universe, to have done for us more or less than this kind of favor Allah has given you? That is why Allah elsewhere in the Quran, he says, فَبِأَيِّ اللَّهِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ.
ربكما تكذبان.
Of all that Allah has placed for you, which one would you really, or could you have denied?
Deny.
That, oh, if God had not created this one, I could have still existed here on this planet as a human being. Which one? Is there anything that ordinarily you could have said that if God had not created it or had not placed at your disposal, you would still have been able to survive on this earth? Point it out. If you don't fall in need of something, you think it is not relevant for you. In everyday life, you see that sometimes you may be having something in your corner. You may think it is not necessary, but you take it and throw it away. The very day you throw it away in the evening, you see that, this thing that I threw away, now I need it. That's why when you go to our forefathers or our grandmothers and grandfathers' rooms, you see a lot of gukungakar, that's how you call them, gukungakar, a lot of very dirty, a lot of rags, a lot of very things that you will consider unnecessary. Why don't you throw these things away? These are not relevant. Throw them away. No. But still, they will keep them because they think that time will come. Even if they don't need it now, time will come. And indeed, more often than not, the Fantis, I think, have a proverb that says that even the rags has a day it is remembered. The rags, a rag is a dirty cloth that you have put on. I mean, a cloth you have put on, and because it is old, in fact, it is torn, it is more or less useless. It appears you are not going to use it anymore, so that you may have to just hang it somewhere, so that when you need something to clean your hands, when you need something to clean bowls, when you need something to clean something, you just pick it, you wet it, and then you are using it. So it is one of the less respected items in the house. But time will come that without seeing a rag, your life becomes meaningless. All that we are trying to say is that everything God has created was created for a reason. And he created them because he knows time will come what being he has placed on earth to serve as a protector, to serve as the caretaker of the earth will need that particular thing. When we come to the biomedical ethics, you will realize that every single, what do we call it, herb, every single thing on this planet, Allah placed it for a reason. And there are times that when you say you are sick or you are suffering from a certain ailment, somebody can show you a certain medicine and you will be shocked. You wish, what kind of medicine is this? Are you sure this really is a medicine? No way, go and try. You go and try with very more or less have a belief. And then just as when you think that it is going to fail, you'll be shocked by the outcome of this particular medicine. This bears the logic of the claim that man depends on, humankind depends on life on this earth. So those acts that are termed as human acts are dependent on our existence here on earth. But the act of man They are not independent because they are things that have been fixed for us ahead of time. We didn't know how they were fixed. So we have no choice over them. This is because not all that humans do is characteristic of their existence. Some human acts flow from involuntary process. Involuntary means they flow from compulsory process, predetermined by divine law. And you and I know that, for example, of course, people are doing so many surgeries every now and then with the belief that they don't want to grow old. Even when people are in their 50s, they still want to do surgeries that will result in them looking very young. People are changing their eyebrows. People are changing their eyelashes. People are removing their eyelashes to replace them with new ones. People are now even replacing their mouth. In fact, the lips that they have on their mouth, they remove it and replace it with plastic. People are changing their buttocks. Men are changing their chin, the beard, that thing on which the beard rests. They are changing it. Men are replacing their cheeks just to be able to look young. Women are trying to go through a whole lot of very painful experiences just to be able to, as it were, maintain their beauty. What is surprising is that the kind of beauty men are looking for are not even those ones they are punishing themselves for. So you can see that there are a lot of things that have been predetermined for us. In spite of all this, cutting their eyelashes, cutting their, what do we call it? Everything, changing it. When the time comes that you have to die, you will die. And when the time comes that you have to grow old, nobody will tell you that you are old. I was hoping that at a point in time, the bones, whilst they are changing the skin, I would have loved that the bones can also be replaced. Unfortunately, and quite antithetical to nature, the bones are things that no, no conscious effort is made as of now to change in any human being, unless there's a malfunctioning bone. And even when they change it, bear in mind that bone will never be able to function as much as the normal bone can function. So it means that there are some things that mankind does not have any control over, no matter how hard he or she tries. For example, growing. You cannot decide that I should remain young permanently. You will grow and grow and grow. Of course, you may make conscious effort to make sure that you are strong, even if you are growing old. But that doesn't deny you the fact that you are growing old. When you wake up in the morning or even in the night, if you are going to sleep and you drink a lot of water and you go to sleep, well, maybe around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock thereabout, you just tighten your what do we call it? Your your bladder. Deny it the opportunity to be freed. Keep insisting that I will never urinate today. When the time comes that you have to urinate, nobody will tell you to go and urinate. When you wake up in the morning, well, of course, sometimes even when you try to ease yourself, you will never succeed. But when the thing begins to make your stomach, and now you feel like visiting the gent, deny yourself the opportunity to go and ease yourself. You will see what will follow. These are all things Allah has predetermined for humankind. They are regulated based on natural law. Man doesn't have any control over this. This set of acts that man doesn't have any control over are the group of acts we have referred to as the act of man. Because man does not have that strong control as to when to do it, when to engage in it. They come by default. They are part and parcel of our human functions. I hope that is clear. Thus, a human act is any undertaking that originates from him or from man as a rational being, rational human being, rational human being, and is personally willed. Those ones that emanate from you as a free, rational, self-deciding individual, and which, of course, you are going to execute, or you execute based on your full awareness or consciousness. This is the type of act that is referred to as human act. In Islam, the concept of man being man, and that man is not about the masculine man, being human, is defined by many causes of action. That could be biological. There are a lot of predetermined qualities. There are a lot of predetermined attributes that makes a person or makes something human. This thing known as human. There are a lot of predetermined qualities or characteristics. And those characteristics do not reflect out of self-volition. No, they are filled, they are created as part and parcel of the human person. What are they? Some of these can be organic. Some of these can be genetic. Some of these can be natural. Some of these can be animalistic. Animalistic. Today, human life is something that is, to say the least, simply not respected. As more and more, though all religious groups preach about the sanctity of human life, in a very sad turn of events, you still see human beings clapping when fellow human beings are being killed. You see human beings jubilating over the death of fellow human beings. The Fanti people, I think, have a song. When it is about you, it is about me. My father used to say, a fool is the one when they throw something and it hits his clothes. He says, hey, it didn't hit me. Why? Because he doesn't consider his clothes as part of his body. But if you throw it and it hits his forehead, cane, and the thing cracks his body and he begins to bleed, that is the time he would think that you have hit him with a stone. A fool doesn't consider his clothes as part of his body. For some of us, because we are not in Israel, because we are not in Iran, when we see bombs detonating, raping very solid buildings, wherein human beings, even if they are offices, human beings are living there. But we observe these things on television. Bombs are thrown into them. Bam! And then these buildings will be falling flat within just a twinkle of an eye. Somebody will be in his room and will be saying that, oh, Israel has a right to defend itself, even if about killing others. Because that person who is talking is not where people are dying. And because it is not, he thinks that probably his family members are not there. Whether all those people who are there die or not, that is not his cup of tea. And so you see such people clapping because they are not affected in the least. But when they find themselves in the other side of the table, you see them expressing worry and probably even hating the people who are issuing such bombs. This is how humanity has been today. Armed confrontation have resulted in the destruction and killing of so many innocent people. But the more people die, the more some people jubilate. There was a time when there was I think a Kenyan citizen, Margaret Marianduta, who was arrested in Vietnam whilst carrying certain substances believed to be cocaine. In Vietnam, when somebody is arrested with substances that are considered inimical to people's health, it's not only cocaine, heroin, and all those dangerous drugs. Once they catch somebody or arrest somebody and they find that that person has these items, they will have to try the person in court. If this person appears to be guilty of the charges of carrying what they call illicit drugs, the punishment for such a person is execution. Unfortunately, the circumstances behind this kind of Induta issue were such that it appears the woman didn't even know the content of what she was carrying. But the person who gave it to her knew what was inside. Opinions are divided. Some say the woman was really aware, and in point of fact, she had engaged in this kind of trade for some time. So her arrest seemed to have constituted a full cap balloon. Whatever the case, whether a criminal or a person who has not committed a crime, whether as a first timer or as a multiple timer, human life is at stake here. It is here that on social media, you will see people virtually making a joke of somebody who, whether it is her fault or not, has been found guilty of a crime that could be justified by putting her to death. Till now, people have made so much joke about this case, such that we don't even know the current status of this woman, whether she has been pardoned. The Kenyan government petitioned the Vietnamese government, even though Kenya is not very, on very good terms, on very good diplomatic terms with the Vietnamese government. But this is life and death situation. There is no harm in trying. Let us try and see if Vietnam will have mercy on us. In any case, Vietnam doesn't have an embassy in Nairobi, Kenya. Neither does Nairobi or Kenya have what do we call it? An embassy in Vietnam. So that made that cultural relationship, legal tussle, very difficult for the Kenyan government. But we have a lot of countries in the Malay world, Malaysia and so many other places, Thailand and other places, some of which have very good relationship with African countries. So the Kenyan government decided to make use of this situation and then possibly plead on behalf of Nduta. As we are talking now, whether the woman has been forgiven or not, or whether her sentence to be justified by death has been reduced or not, we don't know anything about this. But when at the time that the situation was clear that this woman was going to be executed, people were rather making fun of it. Now we don't even know whether the woman has been forgiven or she has not been forgiven. This is the kind of humanity we are having today. Whilst one person is suffering, another person is making a joke of that suffering. So this is one of the animalistic kind of attributes that we were actually addressing. And this animalistic attribute could be carnal, such as people trying to satisfy themselves irrespective of where that satisfaction will come from. You know people who try to even sleep with animals. You know people who try to even marry trees. There was a certain marriage in the US where a woman got married to a tree in her own house. This is crazy. We call it sexual perversion. She knows that a tree is not something that is capable of marrying. But she decided to marry the tree in a very sumptuous kind of wedding. This woman was actually married to this tree. Excuse me, give me some 2 minutes. My battery is falling. Let me connect with a power bank. 2 minutes. Good. I'm back. Now, okay. This implies that not everything humans do has a characteristic of the true human act. Thus, we bypass this part. Okay, we're here. So some of them can be carnal, some of them can be fleshly, some of them can be bodily. There's no need for us to emphasize this anymore because all of them connect with satisfaction of human sexual needs. Or some of them could be spiritual. Some of them could be transcendental. In this carnal, animalistic kind of features that we are talking about, the spiritual implications have very dire consequences. As a matter of fact, the whole of the conflict between the Muslim world and the West is connected by some people to religious factors, to spiritual factors. Consistent with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, what many are reading meanings into is that Israel says the Jewish people are the ones that are the blessed tribe. And so they are the ones that were giving the land belonging to the Palestinians, which initially used to be called Canaan. This is the land, according to the scripture of the Bible, God gave to the Israelites as a gift under very strange religious conditions. So indeed, spiritually or animalistically, human beings through spiritual attributes can do a whole lot of things that may not sometimes ethically make any sense. Some of them can be transcendental, such as the same Israeli-Palestinian issue could be explained. Others are value-based. All these, there is no need for us to emphasize in terms of explanation. The physical or biological laws that govern human behavior occur in them independently of one's knowledge or the willpower. So here, in this case, man has the free will as far as the human acts are concerned. But in the case of the acts of man, there are numerous restrictions, as we have already emphasized. These laws occur through the work of nature alone. With regards to the human act, with regards to the act of man, they are based on the work of nature. We don't have any control. Thus, human acts like breathing, growth from childhood to adulthood, and sleep are human acts, though, that do not occur in man out of self-volition or self-consciousness. You know, as we have mentioned, all these acts are not based on one's choice. You can't decide to say that I will not sleep. When the time comes for you to sleep, you will sleep because you don't have any control over it. This is part of the act of man. These, though, are executed by humans. They cannot be classified as human acts because humans are not in charge. Humans are not in control of these acts. They are performed as part and parcel of their human functions. Thus, these ones, even if one performs them or one engages in them anywhere, one cannot be punished. For example, you are just sitting in class and you are dozing off. If anything happens and you fall asleep, you are you are praying, and at a point in time you are sitting in the mosque and you sleep overtakes you and you lose control of yourself. These are not considered to be sinful because you don't have control over them. That's the point of significance. Therefore, those that man has no control over are not classified as human acts, although they are executed by human beings. They are rather considered as human functions, as I have said already. In the Islamic concept of free will, man is seen as the originator of only actual actions that flow from the will directed by physical human reason. So something can be considered as based or being based on free will if man has that full control and that thing is directed by personal reasoning, directed by rational self. So if you did not actually reason, you didn't think through, in other words, you didn't think about whether this thing I'm doing is evil or it is good, so that you could have decided to or not to do it. You sat down, thought about it, reasoned about it, and eventually took a decision on it, that this thing will be beneficial to me, so that you executed it accordingly. Such an act cannot be considered as human act because you didn't have that free reason to do. This argument assumes that human acts are always consciously executed and freely willed. That is why when we were setting limitations, once such free will does not work, once a person is under some obligation to undertake an act, even if that particular act is based on reason, once there's the slightest level of coercion, there's the slightest level of control, such an act cannot be considered as a human act, because then one cannot be blamed for something one doesn't have full control over. And this is the basis for it. Therefore, any act that is not consciously executed and freely willed does not fall within the mannerism of human act, despite the fact that that act or such group of acts emanate from man as a human agent. So, having said this, we should bear in mind that there are so many acts that, although are not considered to be part and parcel of our human functions, the mere fact that we don't have full control at the time we execute such an act or such group of acts, they cannot or we cannot be punished for acts we don't have control over. Remember, it is only acts that we have full control over that we can be punished about. Those acts that we don't have any control over, man cannot be blamed for them, even if they are not part of our human functions. I hope that is clear. When a human being hatches a motive and a plan or cause for his act and finally decides to execute the act, then the stimulus, or he stimulates from himself a human act, and this evolves rather from a union of free will and personal reasoning. We have said this and said this and said this again. There's no need for us to worry ourselves again here. Therefore, a human act from the Islamic perspective is the endeavor that results from a permutation of these aspects, which eventually leads to the act of deciding. So the hallmark is decision, but an important factor is the personal reasoning, where we have the full chance of reasoning carefully about that particular act before we execute it. Such an act is considered to be a human act. In the act of decision, a man constitutes himself, or a human being constitutes himself as a real source of action that concretely aims at a freely chosen good. So you chose it, you reasoned about it, you knew the implications of undertaking that particular act, you decided to execute it, and consequently, you are going to be responsible. The implication is that you don't have control. I mean, you are not guilty of an act or group of acts that you don't have any control over, or that you are not able to reason about and consciously uh, able to execute it accordingly. This good is first the arousal of the action. That is, you become conscious of that action and aimed at an object. That is the act you are going to execute. As long as a purely object good does not enter into a real relation with a person, it is not evoked in him. Any action that is the consequence of a teleological causation of the good. So here, it is only when you are aware, deciding here, that act you are going to execute is also there. You decide. There is an interval between you and the act you are going to execute. You decide on your own, reason about it carefully, know the implications or the consequence. The teleological good, that's the consequence. You know the impact, the implication of you executing that particular act. In spite of you knowing that implication, you still go ahead and execute it, being fully conscious of the fact that there is a certain consequence of it. And consequently, you execute that particular act without anybody's influence. If such a thing happens, then you can be considered as having committed a human act. This explains why the intention of a person weighs higher, because the intention is the beginning, where you are standing. You had it there before you execute it, and you target an end product, which is the goal, which is the final product. So in the case of the intention, even if the final product does not turn out to be good, at least there are a lot of other, what do we call it? A lot of other variables which can still help you to achieve something, even if the end product does not turn out to be good. It is for the same reason why an act without any intended consequence has no moral value in Islam, because we indicated that although Muslims or a Muslim act is based on intention, intending a thing and eventually succeeding to execute it are two different things. So even if the intention plays a leading role in determining the ethical value of a human act, the consequence as well also plays a very crucial role in determining the ethical value. Therefore, the two of them move coterminously and conterminously. Now, let us look at the categories of human acts. Now, the issue of category of human act has so many names or so many terminologies associated with it. On the one hand, we have what we call values of judgment. Values of judgment. It is the same thing we call categories of human act. It is also known as levels of judgment. Levels of judgment. It is also known as values of Islam. Values of Islam. It is also known as categories of act. In Arabic, it is known as ahkam al-khamsa. Ahkam al-khamsa. Ahkam, because ahkam is the plural form of hukum. Hukum, which means a judgment. Now, al-ahkam al-khamsa means the 5 judgments. So, instead of calling it levels of judgment, instead of calling it 5 values, instead of calling it values of Islam, instead of calling it levels of judgment, or whatever you want to call it, you can also call it 5 judgments of Islam. There are 5, not 6. So if you see anybody including anything that makes it more than 5, you know that the 6th one may form part of any of the others. The 5 values, what are they? The categories of acts, what are they? The 5 levels of judgment, what are they? They are a system for the classification of all human acts, not the act of man. At this point, you should bear in mind that our concern is no more the act of man. The act of man only came to distinguish between self-volition and free will, as well as destiny and human function on the other. Our main concern is about the human act. Now, there are systems for classifying all human acts and their relation. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Uh, What happened?
Nothing, sir. Just that your screen.
Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
sir.
Okay. But I can't see my. Whenever I join, I see some blue something on top. I can't see it this time. I hope the network is not going to misbehave. Oh, okay. Now, as we indicated, the 5 levels are a system for the classification of all human acts and their relationship according to their ethical value for the purpose of determining their rightness or wrongness in line with the Islamic norms. Now, remember, although Islam discusses what we call good deeds, good actions, there are different degrees of this good action. You remember some time ago we were talking about a situation where somebody can go to a church, somebody can go to a mosque, and that person has maybe one person or two people go to a mosque. That's how we said it. And one of them may have about 100 million. That person offers around maybe 2,000 Ghana cedis as a sacrifice or as a collection in the church. And another person owns just about 100 Ghana cedis. And that person decides to contribute a whooping 80 Ghana cedis. In the court of humanity, it will become obvious that the person who contributed 2,000 Ghana cedis will carry the day. But as far as Islam is concerned, it is the percentage of what the person has that he contributed that forms the basis for reward. of that action. That's when these two people were contributing. One of them contributed just about 20% of what he has. The other contributed almost 80% of what he has. So obviously, even though in all cases some good has been committed, it is obvious one of them has done better. One of them has performed better than the other. And therefore, in terms of reward, all of them cannot be given the same reward. This is the point we are trying to raise. The mechanism for determining the reward of an action spiritually is what we are referring to here as the levels of judgment. But not only spiritually, in terms of the award of punishment on earth, these levels of judgment also play a very crucial role. And we'll see the reason why very soon. You let us continue. These 5 levels include the following. 1, Fard or wajib. Fard or wajib. 2, mandub or mustahab. Bear in mind that these words are used together, though it doesn't mean they are the same. No two words can mean the same thing. Bear that in mind. Therefore, although fard and wajib are used together, they cannot in any way be the same contextually, whichever way you want to use it. So, mandub or mustahab, then makruh, mubah or ibaha. Then we have makruh. One of them is missing. I don't know how it disappeared. But the last one is haram. I don't know how that one disappeared. Yes. Was somebody talking? Was somebody trying to talk? All right. I hope what I'm saying, you have heard me. What I'm saying is, we have wajib or fard. We have mandub or mustahab. We have mubah or ibaha. Then we have makruh. Then haram. But haram didn't appear here. And I'm saying I don't know what happened, but just add it. Haram. That is the 5th category. That's the 5th level of judgment. Now, let us take them one after the other. Fard or wajib. Fard or wajib are a group of acts enjoined to be observed from time to time. These are compulsory acts, the omission of which attract punishment, and their performance is rewarded. The point of significance is that any act that is classified as fard is compulsory for all Muslims. So if a person fails to observe any act that is classified as fard, that person commits both a crime and sin. Very soon we'll be able to distinguish between crime and sin as far as Muslims are concerned. Islam distinguishes between crime and sin. They are not considered to be the same. But when somebody fails to observe any act that is considered to be fard, that person is deemed to have committed a crime and a sin at the same time. Committing a crime and sin means that that person can both be punished here and in the hereafter. And we will see the reason why. Allah said in the Quran, for example, that He created man or mankind and the jinn for no other reason than for them to worship Him. So the entire purpose of creation is for the worship of the one true God. So it is not your choice as a human being to decide to worship God or not to worship God. It is your duty. Allah has placed it as your duty. In fact, He has placed it as a burden on your head. Failure to discharge which constitutes a crime against humanity and sin against the Creator. In terms of crime against humanity, for example, when you go to the mosque, you and I know when they finish praying, either the muazzin or just anybody who is ready to help this muazzin will take some bowl, fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah, literally, fi sabilillah, literally, in the path of Allah. All that you're saying is that bring something for use, for the sake of Allah. It could be what they are using to buy ablution cattle. It could be what they are using to get something to, construct a certain borehole to help the community. Just bring some contribution that will help a passerby, somebody who is traveling and gets stranded and passes by the mosque. Let me go and see my fellow Muslim brothers, whether they will be able to help me in this contest. So you, the person who joined or who went to join the prayer, may not pay anything at that material moment. But your presence and the ability of the Muslim community to... Hello?
Hello, sir.
Today
Hi.
I'm suspecting today we don't have a very reliable network. Anyway, so all that we are trying to say is that your presence at the mosque is more or less a kind of avenue for encouraging people to help the Muslim community. So even though you are not going to contribute anything after praying, sometimes your presence alone, which facilitates the ability of the Muslim community to meet regularly for that prayer, could result in somebody contributing or making some contribution for the benefit of the Muslim community, for the benefit of those who don't have in the society, for constructing something that will be useful for the larger society eventually. So if you refuse to attend prayer, there is even a tradition of Prophet Muhammad that says that Allah will never destroy the earth when He has a single worshipper that is devoted to His worship. Some of these traditions, those of us in Hadith, we have already interrogated it. But the fact remains that Allah doesn't joke with His worshippers. So under certain circumstances, God might temper justice with mercy when it comes to people who devote to His worship. So assuming God is not going to destroy the earth because one person is devoted to His worship and you are the person, how grateful can humanity be to you? If you don't worship God and all the others don't worship God, eventually the world can be destroyed because of the absence of people who worship God, including you. This bears the logic of the criminal dimension of a person who refuses to pray. That's number one. I hope I'm making sense. Number two, prayer is not the only compulsory thing Muslims are expected to observe. Zakat. Zakat is part of what we consider to be fard. Every Muslim has it as an obligation to pay a certain percentage, normally 2.5% of his wealth, which has been under his or her control for 12 consecutive months. If you have about 100 million, which has been with you for an extended period of 12 months, exactly 12 months, not less than 12 months, you are expected to pay just about how much? 2.5 million Ghana cedis. 250, how do we even call it? It's our money there.
That's one
200
one
and
fourth
two.
140, I think.
Is that?
I said 140 also can be the same thing.
I'm not getting you.
I said when you use 140, one over 40, it is the same thing as 2.5.
Okay. Yeah. You see, one fourth is 2.5%. You see, so in the end, out of the 100 million, you are expected to pay only 250 Ghana cedis. That is the old 2.5 million. This is the amount you are expected to pay at the end of the year, at the end of the 12 months. Is this too much to pay? In spite of this, a lot of Muslims are not able to honor this kind of obligation. In a more properly constituted Muslim community, it is with these facilities that they are able to construct road. It is with these facilities that they are able to sometimes sponsor maybe borehole facilities. It is with these facilities that sometimes the Muslim community is able to sponsor even educational complexes, educational facilities, educational institutions. Build a mosque. Today in Ghana, almost every community wants free mosque to be built. Almost every community. We have very wealthy people, very super duper rich Muslims in Ghana. Yet every community wants Saudi government subvention. Ihsan Ventures, Muntada Islamiyah, a whole lot of organizations. Everybody wants a free something that is coming from an Islamic NGO because we are not willing to pay zakat. Apparently, we don't have a properly constituted institution for ensuring this. The Ghana Muslim Conference started under the auspices of the Muslim minority caucus in parliament for the purpose of uniting all Muslims, whether Shia, Ahmadiyya, Al-Sunnah, Tijaniya, or whatever group that we call ourselves, bringing them together for the spiritual journey of contributing to help so that we can have a more focused and development-oriented kind of society.
Are we there? Like I can't hear anything again. Oh,
I'm here. My screen was tempered with. You can't see my screen. Can you see my screen?
no, I can see it was that the sound. Yes, please. It was the sound that was not coming. I thought you were off.
No, I was disconnected. I don't know whether I was disconnected, but I tried to reset it. Anyway, so in spite of all these very humble kind of offer that the Ghana Muslim Conference decided to start, they are encountering severe challenges in uniting the Muslims for them to be able to make some small contribution for aiding this kind of plan of just receiving some small contribution for the Muslims for the humble purpose of facilitating development in Muslim communities. So, I mean, the less we say about all these things, the better. We see that our inability to pay zakat or our refusal to pay zakat has very severe criminal consequences. We don't only influence others not to pay, but we try to vitiate our own continuous commitment to always, as it were, oblige or observe our civic responsibilities. And zakat is part and parcel of our own responsibility towards the society, the larger society, and of course, the vertical relationship between us and the Creator. Anybody who pays zakat purifies his wealth. So if you refuse to pay zakat, it means you are virtually telling us that your wealth is dirty, because zakat is meant to purify our individual wealth. Thus, what we refer to as fard is something that does not give man or humankind or Muslims any avenue for escape. On the other hand, wajib is often used interchangeably, not only by different schools of thought, but by Muslims generally. However, as I said, no two words can form or can mean the same. Wajib and fard are only distinguished mostly by the Hanafi followers of the Hanafi school of law. Sunni law is clustered along about 4 schools. We have the Hanafi school of law, founded by Imam Abu Hanifa. We have the Maliki school of law, founded by Imam Malik ibn Anas. There are 2 names that bear this name. We have Malik ibn Anas. Then we have Anas ibn Malik. They are not the same. Malik ibn Anas was the legal luminary from Medina. He lived some centuries after Prophet Muhammad. He is believed not to have seen any of the companions of Prophet Muhammad. It means that he lived in the 2nd century, shortly after the 1st century, because his master, Abu Hanifa, allegedly met 4 of the companions of the Prophet, even though, according to his biographers, he may not have actually traveled to meet them. But Imam Malik was taught by Imam Abu Hanifa. Then we have Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik was a personal servant of Prophet Muhammad. Call him maid servant. Hey, is that how we call him? The maid is a female. He was the servant of Prophet Muhammad. In other words, he was his personal assistant at the time he was in Medina. Then we have Shafi School of Law, founded by Imam Idris Shafi,
Hanbali.
Imam Shafi was actually taught by Imam Malik. So you could see that the first school of law learned on his own. So the Hanafi school of law virtually didn't have any serious compendium of laws or compilation of laws. Many of the laws of Imam Ahmad ibn, what do you call it? Imam Abu Hanifa were mostly compiled by his own students. The implication is that he himself did not even write down his own ideas. It is his students that came to put down many of his ideas. Imam Abu Hanifa taught Imam Malik. Imam Malik was able to memorize all the works compiled for Imam Abu Hanifa. Then he also had the fortune of teaching Imam Shafi, who also allegedly committed to memory almost all the legal compendiums of Imam Malik. The last of the four schools was Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the Hanbali school of law, founded by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was also taught by Imam Shafi. So for those of you who will have the opportunity of going through the Musnad compiled by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, you will see that it is more critical with the traditions of Prophet Muhammad than all the other collections, including even the Muwatta Malik. Because Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said that for him, it is better to follow a weak tradition of Prophet Muhammad, a da'if tradition, than to follow one's personal reasoning. So that was his position. His biographers in the Muqaddimah, the introduction of the Musnad, he is quoted to have said that he never, according to his editor, today's biographers of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal have denied that claim as a lie. But within the Muqaddimah, it says that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal never ate watermelon, not because Prophet Muhammad didn't eat watermelon or prohibited watermelon, but merely because, according to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he never read any tradition that indicated how Prophet Muhammad ate watermelon. And therefore, to avoid the possibility of eating watermelon, not according to the way Prophet Muhammad ate it, he didn't eat it at all. That should tell you how critical Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was of the traditions of Prophet Muhammad. Now, what we are saying is that the Hanbali school of law, the Hanafi school of law, founded by Abu Hanifa, is the only school that actually distinguishes between what we call fard and wajib. According to the Hanafi school of law, wajib is any act that is located at the lower ebb of fard. In other words, fard is the group of acts that are considered to be compulsory, that do not give any option of escape or any option for escape. On the other hand, wajib is the group of acts that, although are considered to be compulsory, they are compulsory for only those who can afford. A classic example of what the Hanafi school will refer to as wajib is the pilgrimage to Makkah, Hajj. According to the Hanafi school, Hajj is considered to be wajib. Why? Because It is one of the acts that, although are considered to be compulsory, they are only compulsory for those who have the means to execute it. You know, if anybody who is a Muslim, pilgrimage to Mecca is considered to be obligatory. Every Muslim is encouraged, and it is one of the pillars of Islam. Thus, once a person accepts to be Muslim, going to pilgrimage to Mecca is considered to be obligatory. Unfortunately, as we can see, not every Muslim has enough resources, or not every Muslim is capable of being able to undertake pilgrimage to Mecca. Because today, before you can undertake pilgrimage to Mecca, you have to go through very tedious hassle of payments before eventually. Those of you who are observing social media reports, you saw the kind of conditions that those who performed the Hajj this year actually went through in Saudi Arabia. Our government promised them very, very nice accommodations, and they indeed paid. They were ready to pay. But unfortunately, on getting to Saudi Arabia, they saw that there was virtually no accommodation because everybody was struggling for accommodation. And this is one country. It is not even the whole country. This is Makkah alone. You understand that? So it is not just a kind of accommodation that is there so that you go and pay for it and then occupy it. In the whole world, everybody is going to perform pilgrimage. That is why the government has to allocate quotas. Because if everybody who wants to undertake pilgrimage has to come to Makkah, you can imagine it will be difficult to provide accommodation for all of the over 6 billion population in the world if everybody should be allowed to go to Makkah. At least we have not less than 32% of the world's population becoming Muslim. So if all of them were to take pilgrimage to Makkah or make pilgrimage to Makkah, you can imagine. Even in spite of all these quotas, many people were found to be living in very deplorable conditions during the Hajj season proper. But the implication is that not everybody, even in spite of those quotas, can succeed in undertaking pilgrimage to Mecca. So then, for those who have the means, according to the Hanafi school of law, they are the ones for whom Hajj is declared or considered as wajib. Now, mandub. Mandub and mustahab, just like wajib and farad, are also used alongside each other. Mandub is the group of acts that flow from either the personal acts of the Prophet Muhammad or the recommended acts or acts recommended by the ulama due to the enormity of benefits derived from them. Again, when we say something is mandub and mustahab are group of acts that are recommended by Prophet Muhammad or by recommendation from the Muslim scholars due to the benefits, the maximum benefits or very attractive benefits that these acts actually attract. They are therefore merely recommended They are recommended merely, but they are not essential. But fulfillment, which is rewarded. What we are trying to say is that although these acts recognized as mustahab and mandub are acts that are considered to be very, very important, they are only considered as important for or under certain circumstances. That nonetheless, if a person refuses to observe them, such a person is not liable for punishment. Now, mandub are those that are actually recommended by Prophet Muhammad alone. These are acts that are considered to be recommended, considered to be very good, and by nature, they are known to attract a lot of reward. And for that reason, the Muslim scholars have recommended, or sometimes Prophet Muhammad personally recommended them for Muslims to observe them. For example, when Muslims pray the dawn prayer, there are some two acts. What do we call it? Some two rakah or units of prayer immediately before the dawn prayer. This prayer is considered to be mandub. Any Muslim that leaves that prayer undone commits a lot of mistakes, but he loses a lot of reward. In spite of this, as I have indicated, these are not compulsory. So when a person is not able to perform them, one is not liable for punishment, but one loses a lot of reward. Another one is what we call Shafi'i wal Witr, the 3 units of prayer Muslims use to close the evening prayer, especially the last one. These are prayers that were performed by Prophet Muhammad. We call them supererogatory prayers. They are so important that if one refuses to observe them, one loses a lot of reward. For this reason, they have been treated merely as compulsory prayers. Sometimes they are even performed in congregation because of the possibility or the fear of some individuals not being able to pray or observe them when they go home. Nonetheless, as I have said, they are not compulsory. But by their reward, if you miss them, you lose a lot of reward from it. But apart from this, we have the group of acts referred to as mustahab. Mustahab is any kind of act that either the Prophet Muhammad had recommended for Muslims to observe them, or the Muslim scholars have seen a lot of reward based on how Prophet Muhammad considered it. Or even if Prophet Muhammad himself did not actually consider it as such, the Muslim scholars have added their voice that although it is not recommended by Prophet Muhammad, because of the reward that that particular act goes with, the Muslim scholars have recommended it for Muslims to observe them because it attracts a lot of reward. So bear in mind that acts that are considered to be mustahab could have been recommended by Prophet himself, or he may not have recommended it, But because of the reward that such acts goes with, or such acts go with, the Muslim scholars have also added their voice and indeed recommended it for the Muslims to observe them. These are the acts that are called mustahab, and that is why they are used alongside mandub. I hope that one too is clear. But as I said, if a person refuses to observe these acts, they are not subject to any punishment. They can refuse. Some scholars consider the zabahi of Eid al-Adha, when you buy, what do we call it? A goat, a cow, a camel, a sheep, or any other animal, even buffalo, and you slaughter it during the Eid al-Adha. This act is considered by the individual, is considered as mustahab because it attracts a lot of reward. But bear in mind, some other scholars might even want to consider it as fard, especially when nobody in that society has observed that kind of act. It is part of what we call fardu kifaya. It is an obligation that every individual, at least one individual within that society should sacrifice a ram. It is something that attracts a lot of reward. But when one person takes that responsibility, it is not covering, or it is not a duty upon the other members. Any other individual who wishes to do it, it is recommended for the person to do it. So bear that in mind also. Mubah. Mubaha are acts that are considered to be ethically indifferent. We are not interested in them. Why? Because as we indicated earlier, the study of ethics is not really interested in something that has been declared as halal. Because if something has been declared as halal, what are we going to do? We don't have the duty, we don't have that requirement, or we can't go back and re-challenge something which has been declared as haram. Which has been declared already as halal. That is not within our purview as Muslim ethicists. We are only interested in something that has created doubt in the minds of the individual, the mustabihat. These are the ones that we try to examine for the purpose of determining whether they are right or wrong, whether they are halal or they are haram. But not those ones that are already established as either haram or halal. We can't challenge what has already been declared as haram, and then what are we going to do for the purpose of making them halal? No. They are the doubtful ones. Those are the ones that we are actually interested in. They are merely allowed with no threat of punishment if they are neglected. So if something is declared as allowed, if you neglect it, you don't commit any sin. For example, when you are on the street, you hear somebody, Sadaka. There used to be a certain mentally derailed somebody at Kotokaba in those days. When you are walking on the street of Kotokaba, this man will not ask you any question. The moment you get into maybe an oven, Toyota Hiace, etc., this man will come and stand by the car. The moment the car begins to move, then he will begin to ask, Sadaka. If he targets a particular car, he will follow this car saying Sadaka, sometimes even running along the car until somebody gives. If you give a coin, he won't take it unless you give some note. If you even give some 1 cedi paper, he will take it. But if you give 1 cedi coin, he won't take it. As I said, this is a mentally derailed somebody. So you are walking on the street and somebody sees you, sadaka, or literally asking you, give me something. If you are able to give, you get a reward, fine. But if you are unable to give, you don't, because it is allowed that you also escape such a person. It's not by force. So if you give, fine. If you don't give, you don't commit any sin. Another example is a worshipper who is sick. When somebody is praying and the person is sick, that person is given the option of sitting down to pray. In fact, if sitting down becomes difficult, that person is allowed to sleep on the ground and still pray by facing the Qibla. If for any reason facing the Qibla is impossible for that person, given the person's condition, that person is permitted to still pray, facing whichever direction he deems fit. I mean, that is comfortable for him. In this case, if somebody refuses to pray, it means that person is just denying Allah the opportunity for worship. I hope that one too is clear. So in this case, if Allah has permitted you the opportunity to sit down and pray, and you say that I don't want to utilize that opportunity, rather I still want to stand up and pray, and you are standing up, and in the course of standing up, you collapse and you die foolish death. You will not get any extra reward for standing. Neither will you lose any reward for sitting down. What is important is that you are permitted to sit down. If you don't sit down and for any reason you think you want to stand up and pray, you don't get any extra reward. God will not tell you that, oh, this my servant is a very humble servant. He's a very dedicated servant. Even when I've ordered him to sit down or I've permitted him to sit down, he's still persevering in standing to worship me. Oh, wonderful. I will give him more reward. Bosu, you are not getting anything extra. In much the same way, when you sit down to perform your prayers or you sleep to perform your prayers, if sitting is not possible, if you stand, you don't lose any. If you sit, you don't lose any reward, because all of them are merely allowed. They don't attract any. Of course, nobody can also punish you for having been given that opportunity to sit down, and now you decide to say that, well, I still want to impress God, so let me stand. Nobody can punish you. But if you die under such a circumstance, more or less you are committing suicide, because Allah knows that He does not want to place a burden on you other than you can bear. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha. So if you try to place a burden on you thinking that that burden will make God to give you more reward, that is foolishness. Simply put, these are all considered to be merely halal. Makruh. Makruh are acts that are considered to be disliked. They are disgusted. They are abominable acts. They are acts that are considered to be detestable, and are those considered to be, or those acts considered as abominable. One does not attract punishment for committing them. Any act that is considered to be abominable, that is considered to be makruh, when you execute such an act, you don't attract any punishment. Despite that, if you commit such an act, you don't also attract any punishment. So it means that if an act is considered to be disgusted, if you commit it, you don't get punished. But if you avoid it, you attract some reward. If you withdraw from the act that is considered to be makruh, you attract some form of reward. And withdrawing from it is considered to be recommended. A classic example is the eating of animals with apparent human features. There are some animals that have very strange appearances. For example, see this one. This is a bat. But look at its face very well. Even its teeth looks like an animal that is laughing. It has very strange canine teeth with often very well developed molars. I think that's the canine, eh? The canine, those ones that are very dangerous. When they give it to you, Joe, you will see real bite. Unfortunately, if I were to be at the office, would have gone through very scary videos so that you see some creatures that have been considered to be makruh in the world of Islam. Some scholars indiscriminately refer to them as haram. They are not haram. When you eat monkey is not considered to be haram. It is makruh because they are disgusting. When you are eating a monkey, it is like you are eating a human being. When they cook it and you take the head and you are chewing it, how will you feel? When they cook the hand and you take it and you are chewing it, you will see the hand like your fingernails. There is another creature known as lima or something. Lima, what we call apostle in Akan. When you are eating its fingers are like that of a human being. Such animals are disgusted, but they are not considered to be haram. They are only disapproved to be eaten. But if a Muslim doesn't care eating such creatures, well, go ahead and eat it. But they are makruh. They are disgusted. If you avoid them, you get reward. But if you eat them, they are not considered to be haram. Now, haram. These are acts that are considered to be prohibited. As for haram, they are totally prohibited. Their commission attracts heavy punishment, while their omission is rewarded. Every act that is considered to be haram is actually preferred. In fact, it is recommended very much. In fact, it is obligatory for Muslims to avoid what is considered to be haram. Thus, when you avoid them, you are rewarded rather. But when you commit them, you rather attract punishment. There are two types of haram. We have what we call haram lidhati. Haram lidhati. Haram lidhati simply means haram in itself. Haram in itself. For example, the eating of the animal, the meat of the swine. Eating of the meat of the swine. That is haram lidhati. Muslims are under very strict circumstances prohibited from taking animals of the pig family, whether the one in the bush, the wild boar, which looks like the pig, or the domestic pig. They are all prohibited. And the basis of the prohibition is scientific. As I keep saying, everything that Islam has prohibited Muslims from doing has a certain scientific basis. thus Muslims are discouraged, in fact, prohibited from taking pork. Muslims are prohibited totally from taking alcohol. Alcohol is also considered to be haram lidhati. It is haram in itself. So anybody who takes alcohol should bear in mind that he's taking what is naturally considered to be haram. When a married Muslim woman engages in sexual intercourse outside marriage, whilst he's married to another man, such an act is considered to be haram lidhati. These are all acts that are supposed to be avoided. But closely associated or next to this haram lidhati act is the group of acts classified as haram lighairi. Haram lighairi. Haram lighairi is the type of haram that is based on prohibition by extension. It is not the act itself that is considered to be haram, but it is what that particular act will lead to that is considered to be haram. It is what the act will lead to that is considered to be haram. For example, everybody is aware that Muslim men are not allowed to have handshake with Muslim women. Not just Muslim women, but men are prohibited from having handshake with women in Islam. So whether the person you are having a handshake, if you are a Muslim man, whether you are having a handshake with a Muslim woman or you are having a handshake with a Christian woman, once men and women meet, prohibition is facilitated between men and women. Men and women are prohibited from having interaction. From having body-to-body contact with each other, as far as Islam is concerned. So, if you are a woman and you meet a Muslim man, you are prohibited from having a handshake with a man. Don't think because me, I'm not a Muslim, so therefore I have the right to have a handshake with a Muslim man. No. That handshake is not only about Muslim women having a handshake with Muslim men. No. It is about women having a handshake with men, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. On the other hand, if you are a Muslim man, don't think that, this one is a non-Muslim. Therefore, I have the right to, or I'm allowed to have a handshake with her. No. If you go to the Muslim countries, sometimes you see some Muslim women, but some Muslim men who are soldiers fighting. And then they come across non-Muslim women who are married. Non-Muslim women, whether Christian or Jewish women, or even traditional women who are married. And you will see Muslims catching such women and raping them, assuming that such women are halal for them. Indeed, there are rules that govern the conduct of war and issues relating to getting women who are married to non-Muslims. But one thing they don't bear in mind is that if the Quran says women belonging to the people of the book are valid for Muslims, we are not talking about women who are married among the people of the book. If a woman is married, whether she's a Muslim or she belongs to a Christian man or a Jewish man, despite these atrocities that are being committed, Quran says such women are not legal for Muslims. However, under certain provisions of Sharia, when such men are given the opportunity, especially when the woman has converted to Islam, if a Christian woman has converted to Islam and the husband is a Christian, or a Jewish woman has converted to Islam and the husband is a Jew, and the Muslim community, because of an effort to protect the woman, give the man the opportunity to become Muslim, and the man says, I don't want to be Muslim, the Muslim community has the right to dissolve the marriage and let the woman marry a Muslim. Sharia gives Muslims the power, because here the objective is to protect the faith of the woman. So that practice of some Muslims, soldiers especially, taking women belonging to the people of the book by force in the name of war, they are allowed, but there are conditions. It is not about when the woman is married, then you go and catch her, sleep with her because the husband is not a Muslim, or that the woman is a Christian, and then because you think the man is a Christian, you have the right to sleep with her even when she is still considered as married. No. It is only when the woman becomes Muslim, or in the situation where today that law doesn't even apply. A situation where a man goes to war in a Christian country and people are captured, such as is going on between Russia and Ukraine. The two parties are holding guns at each other. Russia can go on offensive on ground, what we call infantry. They go to war with Ukraine. You see Russian soldiers going on foot, holding guns. There was a time that some Ukrainian soldiers came to conquer a whole village in Russia. The Russian soldiers surrounded them and asked them to surrender or they face death. Eventually, they were taken hostage. They were taken to Russia. If such situations happen in a Christian environment where Muslims are going to war, they are attacking the village. That village has come under attack, and Muslims surround or ambush Christian soldiers or Christians and eventually take them as war captives. When they take them as war captives, such women cannot be considered still as being married to the Christians because they are taken as captives. And once they become captives, they are considered as personal properties of those who captured them. This is one language of Islamic war, which is not only Islamic war, in fact, it is international war. So those soldiers that were captured in Ukraine, those Ukrainian soldiers that were captured in Russia, if the Russians like, they can take them as slaves and indeed use them for whatever purpose. In fact, sometimes they can even execute them. International law permits the Russian soldiers or the Russian authorities to even execute them because such people have not been considered or cannot be considered as friends of Russia. So when women are captured in the course of war as spoils of war, that's how we call them booty, as spoils of war. This is a war circumstance. And such women are captured. Once they are captured into slavery, they don't continue to be considered as having been married to such men anymore. But not when a Christian who is not actually captured, even if he is captured, it's about people just illegally. Maybe Muslims and Muslims are waging war somewhere, and somebody is just walking his own way. Then he just is just captured along the route of the war. You can't consider such a woman as somebody you can use anyhow. If you do that, you are committing sin. So there are rules and regulations that govern the spoils of war. For this reason, when Muslims meet non-Muslim women. The same law that governs their interaction with their Muslim sisters and brothers are the same laws that govern their interaction between them and their non-Muslim brothers and sisters. There's no difference between that law. If gambling is prohibited in the mosque, it is also prohibited outside the mosque. Even if you are in a Christian home, even if you are in a polytheistic home, whatever you can do in the mosque equally cannot be done outside the mosque in that poor, or call it filthy, environment. So then, such having a handshake with the woman is haram legairi. It is haram legairi because it is not a handshake itself that is considered as haram. Handshake being considered as haram with a woman is because it will lead to fornication or adultery. The understanding is that the whole body of a woman is considered as part of her privacy. So when you touch a woman, unless there's no effective blood running in you, and of course there are some women who virtually have the body of a man. When you have a handshake with her, her palm is even harder than a masculine man. But even when that happens, once you have a handshake with a woman, the understanding is that sexually you will get attracted to yourselves. And once you have a handshake with a woman, the likelihood of you admiring her and possibly following that with a certain request to do something which is considered to be illegal is very high. For this reason, do not even have a handshake with her. Do not even hug her, so that it will lead you to that. Because if it leads you into committing adultery or fornication, you know the punishment Islam has for it. So this is what normally we call Sadda Darai. Sadda Darai simply means blocking the means to committing sin. Because when you commit the sin, the punishment that goes with it is severe. So Islam wants to put in place the rule that will prevent you from committing the sin, so that you will not fall victim to its punishment. So again, the refusal to allow Muslims the opportunity to have handshake among themselves in terms of sexual interaction or in terms of gender interaction is all because it protects the same people from falling victim to such evils. Somebody would then ask, so when I see a woman and assuming I don't have any evil intention towards her, and I think that she's just a woman and I don't have any intention to, coerce her or talk to her, or can I have a hand? No. It is already established. So there is no need to provide any what do we call it, any avenue for making it halal or whatever. The thing has been declared already. So do not have a handshake with women. The only cluster of women, in fact, even having a handshake with your own sister in public is makruh. That one cannot be declared as haram, but it is makruh. It is considered to be disapproved because you know your sisters. What about those who don't know the relationship between that woman and you? To avoid suspicion, do not even do it, because the one who doesn't know might think that, hey, Namalampa is having a handshake with a woman in public. That person doesn't know that that woman you are shaking is your sister. Or even hugging your own wife in public should be discouraged. They are all considered to be makruh, not haram anyway, because they are your wives. So literally, they are not prohibited for you. But because of suspicion, to avoid people suspecting that probably because you are having a handshake with her, she's your girlfriend or she is your something, when the person doesn't know the relationship between you and that woman. To avoid that suspicion, Islam discourages you from hugging a woman or having a handshake with even your own wife in public. But in point of fact, when you are in your homestead, your mother is not prohibited for you to have a handshake with her. Your sister it's not prohibited for you to have a handshake with your own sister. However, if that sister is not coming from your mother's loins, be careful. There are restrictions. It means that, for example, somebody, my my father's sister's daughter, the person we will call cousin, or my father's sister's daughter. That father's sister's daughter is somebody to whom marriage is permitted. By virtue of that marriage being permitted, you are prohibited from having a handshake with her. Anybody with whom marriage is permitted for a Muslim, that person is prohibited for him to have a handshake with. I hope this is clear. Uy.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I think it's already 9 o'clock. It's now 9:19 or so. Let us stop here. But of course, note where we have reached. We are now going to the human person in the Islamic ethical philosophy, humanism, another very controversial topic in Islamic ethics. Many people think that religion does not place the human person at the center of everything, that religion is more human-centered than God-centered. So some people are thinking that we seem to speak for God. We are acting for God instead of placing the human person at the center of our life. We rather think about how to satisfy God, even to the point of making ourselves sad. But Muslims think that religion rather places the happiness of the human person first, rather than God. What does God want from us? It is rather for our own happiness that we have all these rules and regulations. So, to make sense of this, tomorrow in the evening, we will digest it a bit further and see what sense we can make out of it. But for now, let us stop here and allow some questioning, some contributions, some clarifications, some concerns, etc., etc. Thank you very much. Any question, observation, clarification? Ladies and gentlemen,
We are with you, sir.
Any observation, clarification? I'm listening. Observation, clarification. If there is no clarification, observation, or critique, can we then end here?
Allah.
All
Okay,
right.
sir.
Then I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Yo, bye.
All right, sir.